those things for granted, because it's really not. We want to make sure that we are getting our families what they need, because this is such a new environment for all of our families. And so I hope these questions maybe help your teams or others sort of reflect on what different can we do to reach our families effectively. We go further into family engagement, and really that middle bullet is the one that I want to call out, about providing language access to our families through translation services and making sure we use things like a language line so that key information can be provided in a timely manner. I think we just can't underestimate how much parent communication is necessary right now, even more so than ever before. And I'll get up on my soapbox for a minute, but I just feel like COVID has made us see that we weren't, as a public education system, there were some fault lines in parent communication, in my estimation, and ways in which it's shown us that we need to get better at collaborating with families. And so language access in particular being a really key feature of that, but also just family voice, family engagement. What is it? I think is something we need to continue to push on. And I think we're being forced to right now in a good way to figure these things out. And I just want us to lean in on that and keep working together. So I'm going to give short shrift to the teaching strategies, unfortunately, just in the interest of time. But I do want to point them out to you, because actually this is where I get really excited about the strategies that are in this document. And I hope that it's where maybe I'll leave you like a cliffhanger to dig into this a little bit more on your own about, and especially when we think about this day and age where education is so different. Again, can we find that gray lining and reshape the way in which we're educating our students? I love that third strategy of making lessons as interactive and experiential as possible. We just know that those experiential lessons really help to build vocabulary, really help to build concepts and language concepts. And so when I think about our dually identified students, that interaction, that natural interaction that occurs, the experiential learning, and I know there are people in here on this meeting from my former district, West Springfield, and I know that where we had over 40 languages in the district. And I just know that, I know we've all been in classrooms where we've been able to see that interactive experience, that experiential learning for students, and how it just sort of naturally facilitated language development. And so I'm excited to think about promoting those strategies as you all do this important work on behalf of our children in the state. So I do have a slide for each of these ideas. I won't go into them in greater detail, but I do hope that I'm kind of whetting your appetite to perhaps use these materials, use this resource guide and or this PowerPoint in order to help further facilitate these ideas in the context where you work as well. So I'm very pleased to see if there are kind of any questions that we want to end with in the 2 minutes that we have left. But I really value your time. I really value what you're doing, especially as we kind of, again, look to the future, look to the sun, and think about what are we going to carry with us from this COVID experience. And I know there are some scars. I know that there's some pain, but I also hope there's some growth. And it's that growth that gives me hope to say, I think we can make an even better public education system as a result of this. And it's because of our collective and concerted efforts on behalf of the students who we have the privilege to serve. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for such depth of information that is so helpful for everyone in our state. And so thank you so much. I really would love to take questions if it is okay with you. We're going to do a little modification, which is we will send them to you after, and we will limit to 2 or 3. And so if you don't mind, we will invite you to respond, and then we can post it. So then we can move our agenda forward. So thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to meet you online. And now, as you said in your presentation, together is better. I believe that collaboration is key to what we need to do. And as the saying goes, none of us is as smart as all of us. So together, I think we really can really overcome the crisis that we are in. But actually, I hope and pray that this will be an opportunity for us to change many things that have been asleep and invisible up to now. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Now I will pass the words to my very esteemed colleague, Dr. Patricia Crane de Galars, that I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years. And I was so excited when I go back to my office after my retirement and I find out who is the director of the Center for Special Education that is now Center for Inclusion. And I said, can you imagine Patricia Crane Galars? I ran down the corridor to really greet her. And so I was really delighted. I would love to say many things. She's the most wonderful colleague. Before she came to returned to Lesley, she was a principal of a two-way school. And I think that's a very important thing. For more details, look at her bio in the program. So now I have the pleasure of passing a word to her.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I love that you, Dr. Johnson, started with images of the students, saying that they inspire you and remind you to persevere. I also thank you for restating the rights of our students to get the services that they deserve in special education and in language. Your message was so hopeful, and I thank you for that. So to continue the conversation, I would like to introduce the panelist, and I'm going to share my screen. And so all right, so some wonderful panelists tonight. And I'm going to ask that our Professor Emerita, Dr. Maria de Luz Zerpa, will you start us off by introducing yourself?
Yes, it's a great pleasure to be with you this evening. I am a bilingual special education teacher, and I'm introducing myself and Professor Emerita. And I say bilingual special education because I do believe that we really need to rethink how we talk about the field that we are in. I've been teaching for many years, and assessment is one of my passions. And now I have the pleasure to passing it on to Anna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me in this panel. Am I sharing my slide, Maria?
Not yet.
Just introduce yourself.
Sorry about that. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the land where I am in right now. I'm physically in New Mexico. And as an immigrant, I'm grateful to and honored to the opportunity to work from here, the land of the Tampachoa, Chinandé, Mescalero Apache, Rarámuri, Isleta del Sur, and Tortugas Pueblo. I am a special education and TESOL faculty at Lesley University, and thank you so much again for having me.
Erica?
Good evening and welcome everybody. I'm very excited to be featured on this panel today. My name is Erica Macedo. I am a special education teacher in Leominster, Massachusetts. I work primarily with students who require a more sub-separate setting, and I have students of various different cultural and linguistic backgrounds that I work with very closely. I'm also a doctoral candidate at Lesley University in their educational leadership program, and I'm focusing on assessment practices for culturally and linguistically diverse students as part of my dissertation that I am going to be working towards very soon.
Thank you. And Nadine?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nadine Stein, and I am the Administrator of Pupil Personnel Services for the Waltham Public Schools. In that role, I oversee special education, school counseling, and health services. By training, I am a special educator. I worked with Maria on my dissertation at Lesley in the program that Erica is in now, and my dissertation was on working how principals can support elementary teachers in working with children who are learning to read in English, children who are bilingual, who are learning to read in English. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start the conversation by asking Maria, would you address the population that Dr. Johnson referred to? Why do we still have a problem? After all of these years, why does the problem still exist?
Yes, it will be my pleasure. As you can see, we are organizing our panel with a collection of books. What do you do with a problem? What do you do with an idea? What do you do with a chance? So as we really look at this population, I hope to be able to highlight some key ideas that can move us forward by starting where we are. And if we really need and are determined to address these needs, we need to seek and know more, as Darling Hammond said, and we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them, from Albert Einstein. So to start us off, we are going to really take a look at the current historical context where we are. And very briefly, we have an educational system that when it started, it was not compulsory, only for some. Can we move to the next slide? Next. Great, thank you. So education was for some, and actually we even know that education were mainly for boys. Then things evolved and we went to have education for all, but learning was only for a few. And this is where the bell curve came in, a system that we still currently use that was appropriate for the time when we had learning for only a few. Now that we have come to the point where we have education for all, so our special ed law does guide us to a free and appropriate education for everyone. Our SLO says, yes, we absolutely have our kids, our students are entitled to achieving at grade level. So it is achievement or learning for everyone. And that requires us to think differently. And that's where I would bring in the J curve that I would love to tell you more about it. But given the time constraints, will be for another time. So when we look legally where we are, we need to take a look at the what major laws influence how we help our students. And yes, everything special ed and language learning is based on civil rights. I well remember when our chapter 766 passed, and it was quite amazing to where we have been and where we are now. Concurrently, or a bit later, we had the chapter 71A. We had the first bilingual education in the country. It was very politicized, but in fact, it's very interesting to know that until it changed in 2001, we had 80% of the children meeting goal in a way that they transferred to the goal of the program. But in any case, the point is we have three major laws that work together to inform where we are right now. And we actually need to do a bit of work, a little more, in terms of how these interact, because it's more than intersect. So when we move to given that we are in the UDL age, here you have the specifics of the laws, because our children have the right to learn English, but they also have the learn to write grade level content. And I think that's really important to really have in mind, because a lot of them only are given the opportunity to make progress, but not to make progress that enables them to achieve at grade level, not only in English language arts, but in language arts in general, in science, in math, and that's critically important. The next, so we are at a marvelous point where our special ed laws ensure free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. And to make it clear that when we're dealing with bilingual English learners with disabilities, we added the plus. So it will be FAPE plus and LRE plus. In the research report that was published in 2011, at the time I used 2 FAPE and 2 LRE. As we discussed it with colleagues and in terms of how we can make this concept really important and clear, we decided to call it FAPE plus and LRE plus, 1 language, 2 languages, 3 languages, or 2 cultures, 3 cultures, etc. On the language learning side, we are at a time where they are entitled to achieve at grade level. They are receiving a instruction in a variety of programs, but over 90% are in SEI. And this is a great concern because SEI, as we'll show a little later, has a success rate that is very low. In a report that was published initially in 2009, commissioned by the Board of Education, and later on follow up work in individual school districts, we have a failure rate of 70 to 80% overall for students who are ELLs in SEI without disabilities. So think about how this environment, in least restrictive environment, might be really impacting our students and their right to an appropriate education. So I will run briefly over where we are. What does special ed law requires us to do? And this is quite important because in my experience with teaching assessment for 3 decades, I find that this is often something that people are not familiar with, that in fact the law does say that we can use a variety of assessment tools and strategies. The law does not say use testing. Testing companies are the ones that are really impacting us and saying that they have the answer and it's prepackaged and it's convenient. So we don't have tests for our for the different languages. Of course, we also know that the law says that all the assessments that we do are to be administered not to be discriminatory on a racial or cultural basis. We know that assessments in the native language is stated right there, or mode of communication. And quite often we see in the literature that most of the kids are really assessed only in English with tests that sometimes are translated with an interpreter. And let me tell you, that is invalid. Any norm reference assessment that was not made to be used with native English speakers is really invalid unless you have an assessment question that is particular to something that you really need to know. The last point that I would like to say in terms of the law is that people have to be trained and knowledgeable about what they're really using. And this goes for standardized assessments, but also goes to whatever assessment strategies that we have, because we have many. So we see that the practices in the field currently, assessments, as I said, are primarily done in English, and with norm reference standardized tests that are not valid. And that's really critical. I wish I could have more time to go into depth why that is. Our bilingual English learners with disabilities, we know they have been misrepresented in special ed for over 30 years. The time is now to do something to change that. They also, very few achieve at grade level from a particular school district, a large school district in Massachusetts. When we look at the MCAS scores for kids with disabilities who are also bilingual, they are the lowest performing of all the children. This is really very concerning. The last one that I really would like to pay attention to, or have us pay attention to, is how much suffering our children who are not yet proficient in English, particularly now during this time with COVID, where they are home, how much suffering because they do not understand enough English to do the content. And I will challenge anyone to show me how in the world can we teach through English when they don't communicate in English and they are entitled to a grade level content access. So that is something to think about. So why do we have this problem? And I will be finishing shortly. I'm going to pick two major issues that I think need to be highlighted in terms of where we are. I think I agree with Stiggins and Marzano when they say that we have an outdated system of assessment. I also agree with Todd Rose that says we must end the average. And there will be a reference on about that later. So we have a system of assessment that it is not appropriate for ensuring that everyone can have access to grade level. The other thing that I really would like to focus on is between assessment and evaluation, because the problem is not with assessment. The problem is with evaluation, that all our evaluators must take into account what is needed to be able to do an evaluation properly. So then we can move from equality to equity, giving students what they need. Because after all, testing is only one component of assessment. And testing per se is not required by law. It's the interpretation of the results that really make the big difference. And I was very happy to see that professional judgment is high on the agenda, but for people to be able to make appropriate professional judgment related to the diversity of bilingual English language learners that are referred to a special ed evaluation, we need to make sure that there is upgrade and capacity building in terms of getting people to know some key factors that I believe are coming up on the next slide. To be able to do professional judgment for bilingual English language learners, we need to think about 4 different areas that are crucially important in terms of how we go from assessment to judgment and interpretation of whatever data we've collected. Evaluators need to be familiar with the culture of the child, not only for the social dimension, but how it impacts the way they think, the way they write, the way they communicate. Evaluators need to know language factors because they need to know how the first language influences the second language. As we went over, understanding the interaction of the laws, and very importantly, to become familiar with the research that is appropriate for bilingual English learners, because a lot of the research, for example, in reading, is only applied to monolinguals, and we need to, for example, make sure that whatever research we are using, we are indeed having the information that applies to this population. And now I have the pleasure to passing it on, because we need to move to, given that we have all these issues, how do we move forward? What are the things that we really can do? So
Thank you, Maria.
Dr. Lopez, passing it on to you.
So I'm going to ask Anna if you would, now that Maria's kind of given us a lot to think about the why, how do we, what can we do that is different and additional? Can you give us a little bit of how do we do this? What ideas do you have?
Thank you, Patricia. If you don't mind scrolling to the next, yes, that one. So I would like to start my contribution by sharing this quote from Slater and Flores Carmona, and I ask you to please read it and think about the scope of assessment on students' lives, the impact that assessment has on students' lives. And as we think about this, let's talk a little bit about how, as special ed teachers, practitioners, policymakers, and faculty, right, and teacher training programs, teacher preparation programs, how it is imperative to closely examine and unpack all of the interlocking biases that have pushed English language learners, emergent bilingual students, and a large part of the population that is BIPOC students, right, which comprise a large part of the ELL and bilingual population that Maria talked a little bit about on her presentation. So the criteria that we use that is both hidden and explicit, right, to define quality, what is quality, what is the standard, right, the quote unquote normal. Unpacking this criteria matters a lot. Most of us, I think, are familiar with some of the ideas behind culturally responsive teaching, and I ask if we can go to the next slide, please. And I believe that we've also talked about culturally responsive assessment practices, maybe with colleagues, maybe in, in our classes in college with our peers. But I think that we're still at risk of handling the pedagogy superficially from this approaches. And we need to be more intentional before talking specifically about how to assess and being inclined to talk about inviting us all to engage in critical self-reflective work, right? What does it really mean to be a culturally responsive teacher and to conduct assessments that reflect my pedagogy? So I think it's important to start my participation with this, and also regardless of how far away we are in our teaching careers, in our programs, I think that we are still very responsible for our own learning and unlearning, and for enacting the pedagogies that are accessible to all of our students. And that involves a lot of challenging ourselves, challenging our biases, challenging all of that ingrained, unchallenged bigotry, classism, racism, ableism, linguicism, and how those are interlocking together and informing our work as teachers. Dr. Tijerina Revilla talks a lot about culturally responsive and also sustainable work. Culturally sustainable work that includes alternative assessment practices. But how do we sustain that? How do we maintain those standards and are at the same time keeping that flow, right? That movement of meeting the students' needs, of having them see themselves in the literacy, how to avoid essentializing them because of the things that we think we know about them, because of the things that we think we know about their communities. So like I said, this involves a lot of challenging our own work. Slater and Flores Carmona proposed this outline that you see, that the classroom-based democratized assessment items, and you can read more about it in their Unstandardizing Curriculum book, because they provide a lot of great ideas and concrete examples of how to do this. So taking into consideration students' perspectives, interests, what they want to learn, and also making them active participants of their evaluation process. And when we think about classroom-based assessment items, I know that a lot of us are familiar with portfolios, classroom observations, community-based projects, essays. But what's important here for me to highlight is that not only because we have these things available for our students means that we're covered and that we are done doing the culturally responsive work or culturally sustainable work. Because these items, we should be intentional in having them give us feedback, not only about the things that our students are doing really, really well, but about how they are engaging with the curriculum, how are they engaging and connecting with us. So this have to be relatable. Can students see themselves and their lived experiences reflected in these items? Are they language accessible? And here I encourage us to ask ourselves, how am I being intentional in making an assessment item accessible for ELL and bilingual students? Am I only providing verbal cues, or everything is written down? Because if we only provide a couple of options for our students and we only use the dominant language, which in this country is English, and then our students fail to our eyes, right? We label them, even based on these alternative assessment pieces. That might not mean, of course, that the student is failing. That might mean that we have not been as intentional in developing things that are accessible for them. We also have to consider families and communities. Sonia Nieto and Patty Bode write a lot about this in their work, and how vital the roles of families in children's academic success is, and how overlooked it is, right? It is not uncommon that teachers tend sometimes to antagonize parents, to blame parents, to judge them because they don't meet our expectations, right? They're not as available as we would want to, but we fail to consider that maybe they're working 2 to 3 jobs, and in that block, in that bias, there's a missed opportunity to connect with them. And that is very, very connected to assessment, because what are we doing with the results of the things we're assessing? Are we communicating and reporting back to families? Is that report accessible to families? Are all of these elements taking into consideration how students are already connected to their own communities, and are we using those funds of knowledge? So I think that all of those things are important to think about when crafting and creating activities and assessment items. And lastly, the feedback. What are we going to do with the feedback that we get, with the information that we get from these items? And this is like an ongoing cycle of assessing not only the content, the materials, but also ourselves. What information is this giving me? And am I further problematizing the student? Am I criminalizing them, right? Because yes, we are online. Yes, things have changed, but the school to prison pipeline is still there. The criminalization of children of color is still there. Black and non-Black, not Latinx children, Indigenous children, the technology divide, right? So being critical and keeping this mindset of flexibility and accountability, which I think that we can share with colleagues, with peers, create spaces where we can talk about how things are working for us, how they are not. Being very, very intentional in dismantling our biases, and not only like reading and reaching out to resources, because that reading is an important part of it, but also taking it to action. So I would like to close with that, and thank you again for having me here.
Thank you, Anna. So there are, as you were talking, Anna, I heard you say, how are the students engaging, right? What are we doing intentionally to get students to engage? And so I would like to ask Erica if you could talk about some innovative engagement strategies that you have used.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So the purpose of my portion of this presentation is to really work to provide resources for those practitioners in the field and to explain ways that we can engage our students, especially in a remote setting. So one of the resources that I wanted to discuss first was Nearpod. Nearpod is a way to present information in a very interactive format you can create live PowerPoints, which the teacher or the person who is administering can provide live control over the PowerPoint or slides. It allows for students to demonstrate knowledge in a variety of different formats. For example, in the picture, you can see that a student is creating a diagram illustrating the phase of the moon for a full moon. And that's through the use of pictures. So students on their screen would have a blank canvas and they can use tools to illustrate a diagram. This Nearpod also has the ability to have open response questions as well as multiple choice. Another function of Nearpod is they allow for the use of gaming as a form of assessment. So for example, if a student is learning about the water cycle, the picture on the top is a game in which students can compete against other children in the class, or they can compete with a computer to try and show the way that water moves through the water cycle. Teachers can create their own resources with this. So for example, the picture on the bottom would be a way for students to demonstrate their knowledge of basic words for reading. And the thing that's very nice with Nearpod is it gives you a very clear and concise summary of results. You can see as you're using it what the level of student engagement was, the ratio of correct questions and answers. You also have a catalog of individual student responses. So if you have students creating a diagram, you can go back into the presentation and you can actually go through and you can view on a separate time and date a way of actually looking at what the student work was that was provided, the answers that were given, and feedback. Another tool that teachers are creating are escape rooms. These are usually used through Google Forms, but I know there are other websites that are available. The benefits of this is that students can move through these escape rooms in a highly engaging format. You can have breakout rooms in your Zoom or Google Meet session, and students can work collaboratively to answer questions, or they could work one-on-one. You as a practitioner do get a copy of the student results as they finish their work. So it's another great way to track progress because you do get to keep those results as you're reflecting back through it. There's also a way to modify for difficulty with this. So the way that this is done is if a student is stuck on a challenging problem, the next question could be leveled to be an easier problem or more of a review. You can also link your, based off of your answer, you can link what students need to review. So you could provide a video that gets embedded into the escape room where you explain a problem that a student might get wrong or get stuck on before moving on into the project. Some other useful websites, the first is Plickr. Plickr is an online resource. Usually teachers will download an app on their phone, but it provides a physical query card where students have the choice of A, B, C, or D. And in that, it allows students to hold up their card with their answer to a multiple choice question, and teachers take their phone and they scan through the room, which allows them to get a very quick tally of student knowledge as they are going through. Quizlet is another resource that teachers can use. It involves mostly vocabulary, and with that, it actually breaks down into a few different ways. The first way is students can practice spelling as a feature. They can practice rote memorization. There's also games that are embedded into this, such as a matching game where you match a word with a definition. There is an asteroid game where students have either the vocabulary word or the definition, and it comes down the screen and students are able to spell the correct answer as a matter of moving through different planets. The final option is a live team challenge where students can work either individually or in teams, and they are going to answer questions to go through and evaluate the correct answers. Again, that's either collaboratively or individually, and the bar across the top of the screen goes through and it monitors student progress. A couple other websites, Kahoot is very popular nowadays, very similar to some of the others presented, where students will go in and they can work either in a group situation or individually, and they will be answering questions regarding whatever topic the teacher has selected. The other area that I wanted to highlight is that Brain Pop also does feature some interactive games and things of that nature where students can go in and practice skills. Brain Pop does not have as great of a data tracking aspect to it. However, it is highly engaging and the kids really enjoy being able to go in and practice skills in a way that is very hands-on and very interactive as opposed to just having a worksheet in front of them.
Thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you.
So we've talked about what to do with a problem, what to do with an idea, and now we're going to pass it to Nadine so that we want to talk about what to do with a chance. Dr. Johnson had referred to working together is better and building coalitions. And Nadine, I know you've done some amazing work on this. Can you tell us some opportunities that are there for us now in this time?
Sure. Do you have my slides or should I? You can go to the next one. I just put that there as a save to save the spot. So one of the things that we've been working on in Waltham, we really just started working on in Waltham, is trying to make some of these decisions using two lenses. I think that for a long, long time, we have, or you can stop right here. For a long time, we've really operated in silos. This is a special ed department. This is the English learner department. This is math. This is history, and so on. And we've been passing things around. And what happens is we're doing a disservice to our students because we're not looking at them fully. We have one lens. I think the teachers who are the English learner teachers who really connect with our students and they connect with their families. They really get to know the children and what they're about and where they're from. And when they believe that there is something going on with their learning, they look to the special educators to help them solve the problem. And the special educators, has been said many times today, rely on a lot of formal evaluation tools that are really more clinical, I think, in nature. It reminded me when I was thinking about this, it really reminded me of these two decisions, these two lenses. One is people who are really assessing from the heart. They're thinking about the kid and the kid's family and the experience of the student. And the special educators who, and I'm not saying they don't have any heart. I don't want you to think that, but they're looking at it from the head, the clinical piece. What are the scores? What are they compared to with this one or that one? And we really can't be making these decisions in silos like that. We have to be working together to figure out what's going on with students, because we don't want to over-identify students, multilingual students, but we don't want to under-identify them either. And so one of the things that we recently started doing in Waltham is we have a very diverse group of people coming together, special educators, English learner education teachers, and administrators. And we are having some conversations around how are we going to be supporting our students who are English learners before we're rushing to say that it's a disability, or the special ed people are saying, no, it must be language. We really want to have a thoughtful process. In order to do that, we've begun a discussion. And our conversation initially is being guided by Collier's book, 7 Steps to Separating Difference from Disability. And we are using that to try to get our mind around including both of these perspectives into understanding where a child is at, and then figuring out what we need to do to help them. So we're not going to have a child who is, oh, that's an ESL kid or that's a SPED kid. These are our students that need our help, and we're only going to be able to give them the best help if we work together. And I think, to me, that's our chance. It's our chance to do that now. and we got to take it.
Yeah, it is our chance. Because what we all do, what you all do, really matters. There are, I'm just going to go through these slides quickly. There are a variety of assessments, and we'll share this PowerPoint. I'm going to go quickly. Maria, you have to unmute yourself.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all so much as we really move forward and we are looking to for innovative ways of how we learn from the past so we can build a better future. We have so many alternative assessments that we can use in English, we can use in English as a second language, we can use in the home language. What we need to have though is people have to have the professional learning to be able to use them with reliability, because research shows that alternative assessments, in order for people to use them, they really need to know the content and how to really address them. So when you look at the PowerPoint is only a small sample of the many things that we have been able to use. And at Lesley, we, for many, many years, we used to teach 2 courses in assessment. One was on standardized assessment. The other one was on alternative. So we had special educators that were monolingual, bilingual, very few bilingual, unfortunately, but everyone left with a toolbox on not only of experience because they use it in their case studies, but they also could use them in their school district. So I would like to wrap up and say thank you. This is only beginning. Back to you, Patricia.
Wonderful. So what you do really, really matters. And I would like to introduce our closing keynote, Dr. Claudia Rinaldi, who will lead us in imagining what if. So Dr. Claudia Rinaldi is a professor and chair of the education program at LaSalle University. After hearing Claudia speak this evening, you will understand why she has so many distinctions and has been awarded for excellence in teaching and in community impact. Her areas of research include the multi-tier system of support framework in urban setting with English learners, teacher education and bilingual education, and diversifying the teacher pipeline. Among her many publications, Practical Ways to Engage All Struggling Readers is a must read. Professor Claudia Rinaldi believes that it is critical to prepare teacher leaders who may serve as advocates and allies for all students. We are in for a treat tonight as Claudia inspires us with, what if? What if we use our current problem, ideas, and chances to enhance our work? This work matters.
It certainly does, Patricia and Maria and Erica and Nadine. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this closing, because it really does matter, and it matters with each one of us, and that's what's really important. So hopefully in this slideshow, I'll give you some things to think about in terms of what if there was more equity in our classrooms for our students who are bilingual English learners. And the first thing I want us to think about after hearing all the presentations today, including Russell's and Maria's and Erica's and Nadine, is that each child brings a unique strength and a unique challenge, just like we all do. And every child has assets that we can leverage to help them. And it is our job to make sure that we don't put them in a one-size-fits-all, but that we're really looking at what they bring each and every day with their families, their culture, their language, and their experiences. The next what if really focuses around the way that, like Maria, I teach assessment class, and what I see a lot of failure in is, or lack of detail, is what if we actually had the reason for the referral drive the educational evaluation process? What if we went back and said, can you clarify that referral reason? And that reason really will take us away from jumping to doing standardized testing only and bypassing elements of the special education evaluation process that are key, such as parent interviews, observations in multiple settings, and connecting to instruction. So the idea here is to continue to look at their referral and make sure that we're following the guidelines of that referral into what we want to learn about the child. And move that into connecting for the goals and objectives of the IEP. There are many times where I feel I see goals and idea and benchmarks that are not connected to that reason for the referral or to the assessment process. It's almost like we pick from a menu. So what if we stopped doing that and really took the time to really think about how individual is this student's profile? And the last thing is to think about whether this disability is present in at least two contexts, particularly for bilingual learners. We must have it present across different contexts. That's a requirement of the law. And I think it's also something that we bypass commonly. It has to be in at least two contexts. What if then we learned about the parents and the culture and their dreams for their children? We don't often ask, what is their dream for their children? My dream was to have my children be bilingual. And no one in 18 years has asked me what the dream for my boys was. So I wanted to put here as part of equity, a what if you knew what each of your parents' goals for their children is. And tell them what they've learned and what they have yet to learn, because we don't know what they're able and capable of learning. And we've made many mistakes in identifying bilingual learners over the years in this misrepresentation. And so working from a framework of what the child has learned rather than what the child is in a score on a standardized test, it would be much more equitable for that particular student. We can also look at what if we did more observational data in the classroom. One of the other aspects that I see a lot, the lack equity, is looking at how the student does in multiple types of classroom, in your ESL classroom, but also in the gen ed classroom. Do we take the time to see how the child interacts in small groups and large groups, one-on-one? And so thinking back to what types of observation-based assessments are available, and what does your professional judgment tell you about how they performed, which is more important than what a test score number is and where that number falls. Lastly, what if equity for bilingual learners meant that any teacher, like these two young ladies here who are master level students, could pick up any IEP for any student and begin instruction the next day? I think our biggest challenge to equity is that we don't know if any teacher can pick up the IEP for a child and begin instruction the next day. Thinking about assessment and thinking about assessment on bilingual learners has to identify what they're able to do and what they have yet to learn. And we are often not explicit in the IEPs enough to know what we need to teach. So think about how equity is built from the IEP and from the assessments. And lastly, I'll leave you with this quote. A teacher should inspire a child to have academic success. A parent should inspire the child to do that success in a way that influences positive change in the world. And that's an unknown author, but I loved it. I feel that the what if equity stands here has to deal with collaboration, but also detail and individuality that every family and every child and every parent and every teacher has. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. So Maria and I were talking about what could people take away from tonight's symposium?
Yes, we would like to suggest that as an outcome of this event, that you identify one problem that you really would like to solve among the many that we have, one idea to learn more about. Learning never ends, and this is only a beginning of so many more things that we all need to know and grow. And one chance that each one of us will be able to take to advance equity for our bilingual English learners with disabilities.
Excellent. And I put in the chat so I've put in the chat another menti.com. If everybody goes to www.menti.com and use the code 6527217.
Patricia, it's one problem, one opportunity, one chance.
Yes. So we're hoping everybody takes a moment and thinks about one problem that they're going to try to solve, one idea that they want to learn more about, and one chance they're going to take to advance equity for bilingual ELs with disability. And so I see people are already there. Please write them down for yourselves and promise yourselves that you will take some action. And if you would like to share with the group the one chance you're going to take, what if we all took a chance and did some of the inspiring ideas that Claudia left us with.
While folks are doing this, I just wanted to say that we will be sending out to you this recording and also the resources that have been shared. I know that Dr. Johnson's PowerPoint is not accessible, but we'll be in touch with him to get an accessible link to that. And we'll include his PowerPoint and the other PowerPoints with the resource lists that have been mentioned this evening. I also just want to say that I loved seeing the comment from Jennifer, who is in Savannah, Georgia, who was talking about how technology is creating this access to all of us that didn't have it before, to be able to come to a presentation like this and to learn such deep and important knowledge about working with bilingual students with disabilities and approaches.
So I know that there were some questions and comments in the chat. As I'm sharing my screen, I can't see those. But if any of the panelists would like to have a last word, or Claudia, anything that you want to share or a question that you would like to answer from the chat, that would be lovely.
I want to just say how touched I am and hopeful in reading the comments in the Mentimeter in terms of asking parents for their goals for their children, increasing communication, advocating for more non-standardized based assessments, looking at alternative assessments, observations, doing parent interviews. And I think, you know, looking at what people are taking today really makes me feel that we all do matter, and we all matter in the circle of influence that we have. And so we hope that you take this and share it with others about what's inspired you tonight, what has made you think about. Even for me, for example, listening to Anna talk about classroom-based democratized assessments is something that I'm not familiar with enough. So I'm looking for Slater and Flores Carmona 2017 as we hang up on this call. But that is the desire to continue to be a lifelong learner and to really make sure that we are using the latest information, the latest data, the latest learning from our own practice to improve the lives of all of our students. So thank you for coming tonight and for all of you in our panel, in our presentations.
Patricia, I'd love to just share some information about the upcoming course.
Sure.
And I have actually a screen share. So if I could trade the screen with you, that would be great. I just wanted to let people know that we will be, through the Center for Advanced Professional Studies, we will be offering a course called Assessment of Bilingual EL Students with Disabilities. And Maria will be partnering with faculty members to teach this course. It is available for credit or for PDP. So if this is a topic that you want to dive into more deeply, get a chance to really explore some of the tools that have been mentioned and some of the resources, this is a great opportunity. It's going to be taught over 6 Saturdays. This information will be shared with you in addition with the other resources that we'll send your way. And the registration link and questions coming to the Center for Advanced Professional Studies. If you feel like you haven't received what you wanted or you need some more information, please feel free to reach out to us.
Is there a link? People are asking for a link and for you to enlarge the image. That would be
Oh,
great.
I'm so sorry. Yep. I will send this to you in addition. But if you search for CAPS at Lesley, you'll get to the Center for Advanced Professional Studies, and that will bring you to the registration link.
Well, it has been such an exciting evening, and I would love to pass it back to Maria to close the evening with us. You're on mute.
My apologies. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who participated in getting us to think about very important things that we need to move forward and think in innovative ways. Thank you to all of those that made time to come and participate with your presence. And I would like to say that assessment is so critical, as we all know, not only from the legal perspective, but also from the meeting students where they are, because if we are to ensure equity as to where they need to go with grade level achievement, we need to know what the starting point is. And assessment is more critical than ever. Alternative assessments are absolutely essential. And in looking at alternative assessments, one of the things that I've been diving in myself is how to use technology as a way to really collect valid and reliable assessment data. And so I would like to close by saying, no matter how much we've learned, how much we know, learning never ends. Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we ended at 6 o'clock.
you.
Sharp.
I know, amazing job.
6 o'clock exactly. That's great.
Oh, great. There we go.
Want to save some of the chat because there were some questions we didn't get to.
Right, there was a question, Anna, about the author you spoke about, Trivia.
Judith Flores Carmona.
Flores?
I'm not sure who it was. One of the chat questions was
Oh, it was
whether
a Collier book.
oh,
Nadine's book.
began with a T though, I think.
Oh, Tijerina. I'll spell it here.
Okay, thank you.
There it
I
is.
just want to say how fun the hour and a half went by on Zoom after sitting on Zoom most of the day was incredible. So it was a really great mix to hear and to learn.
So well organized, you all. Very amazing. I'm just so happy for you. So.
Thank you. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, you've inspired me tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have Judith's book here. It's really like it has so much depth, not only in assessment, but it's like alternative practices. And Slater's work is very focused on that area. So it's really.
Love how you have it posted.
Yes, I know, it's all over.
Yeah. So I did save the chat, Patricia, also. I bet you might have too, but I've saved it, and the recording will come to us, and you and I can talk about sending it out to everybody. I have I'm hosting an award ceremony in an hour, so I'm going to leave you all.
Okay, excellent. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Yes, thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Yeah, just here as support, because you all are the experts here. So thank you very much. It was such a great turnout. We had over 100 people for a while there, so that was fantastic.
It was almost through the whole hour and 15 minutes. So I was looking at the numbers. That was really quite impressive.
I was also looking. I think we got up to 119 at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. And several people they didn't want to leave, but they put in the chat that they had to, and they apologized. And so, yeah, Erica, there was such a buzz when you were talking about your tools. People were like, I use this, and they were sending each other things in the chat.
People very strongly about Kahoot is what I saw in the chat.
Yeah, but then they had advice like, oh, you can extend the time, and you know there were things about it that were, I think, they were really engaging in something, which makes me feel like it. You know, we just wish we could. The next thing is to figure out how to really create working groups, you know, in our spare time.
Yes, but it was Erica, you did a really nice job making it feel like easy and engaging. And you know, I told Maria, I feel like we addressed policy, practice, assessment, connection to family, and collaboration all in 1 hour and a half.
Amazing.
We did.
And I'm gonna go. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Sure. I just wanted to let you know it is still recording. So when you send this out, all of this is going to be attached.